Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast and increase your financial wisdom. You will find episodes about investments, the infinite banking concept, how to fight inflation, the financial side of retirement, and financial questions Jesse asked his girlfriend. Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast on any podcast platform or watch it on YouTube. There are new episodes of the Wealth Talks podcast weekly. Search for Wealth Talks podcast online and subscribe for free.
My friends, do you smoke, vape, or chew tobacco? If so, Knick Knack Naturals is here to help you crush your vice. Knick Knacks are nicotine mints that completely dissolve in your mouth. No smoke, no spit, no mess. This product is only for folks currently using nicotine products who are looking for a better alternative. Visit knickknack.com and use promo code Todd to save 15%. That's NICNAC, knickknack.com, promo code Todd.
Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that is right, my friends. Hour 2 of the Todd Huff Show today. It's a pleasure to be here. Todd at ToddHuffShow.com. If you have thoughts, questions, feedback, yes, always include that adoration and praise. Or you can text 317-210-2830, my friends. I want to talk about tariffs this hour. I know that this isn't the only thing we're going to talk about, by the way. I know that this is not, if you just say we're going to talk about tariffs, not necessarily the most exciting thing, but it's relevant. It's relevant because of what's happening with tariffs that we have, that Trump has applied to imports from Canada, imports from Mexico, imports from China. And so they, of course, have also applied tariffs. They have been applying tariffs to things that we export to these countries. I want to talk about this, and I want to address the question, why are conservatives, why someone like me, more understanding about tariffs than I am with inflation or other government spending or the federal debt? I'll talk about that. I'll explain it. It's not just because the guy in office now is on, quote, the Republican team, and I'm a Republican. He's our guy and all that. It's not that at all. It's about the idea and what's actually going on here. So I'll explain it and I'll go through that. And we've got other things we want to get to as well. In fact, we're going to talk a little bit about how most Americans actually want to negotiate an end to the war between Ukraine and Russia, which is, I mean, I've seen people out there defending the idea of letting this war continue. I've seen people out there even arguing for American boots on the ground. I kid you not, my friends. So that's where we're headed in this particular hour. Conservatives, it's time to take a stand with your wallet. That's why we created Freedom Marketplace, and we created it here at the Todd Huff Show. It is our baby, as they say. It's owned and operated by the Todd Huff Show. FreedomMarketplace.net is where you would go, but this is a free directory of businesses that you can go and visit. They share your values. They refuse to support leftist candidates and leftist causes. There's no logins, there's no gimmicks, there's no cost, there's none of that. It's just a place that we have put together for you, again, totally for free, for you to connect with businesses that love America as much as you do. If you're tired of funding the woke agenda, which time permitting, and I doubt we have it, I would like to talk about that as well. Sunny Hostin is out there saying, I guess if to summarize what she said, the Sunny Hostin of The View, which I know some of you don't like me talking about, the women of The View and some of the stuff out there, but I'm a believer in comparing and contrasting. And there's a mental disorder. There's a fundamental confusion that's happening on the left, and it needs to be exposed for what it is. Anyway, she's out there saying that it is biblical to be woke. Leave that as it as it is right now. We'll see if we get to that. But anyway, if you're tired of funding wokeness yourself, head on over to freedommarketplace.net. It's free. It's easy. It's the patriotic thing to do. Liberty and business for all, my friends. All right. So all of that being said, let's talk about tariffs. Let's talk about tariffs. And let's start with that fundamental question that I've raised. Why are conservatives more understanding about Trump's tariffs than they are with, say, Biden's inflation? And right off the top, I know how people think, and they're going to say, well, that's because it's okay when your guy does stuff that hurts the economy, but not when the other guy does stuff. And I'm not going to say that there's no one out there who thinks like that, but I don't. I mean, there are things that I have disagreed with Trump on. It's not many things. And politically, I can say if you factor in the full political equation, he's probably not wrong on why he takes the positions if you're looking at simply winning elections. But I deviate from Trump on the issue of being pro-life as it pertains to abortion, of course. Trump made the assessment that having a ban of abortion was not something that the United States is either ready for. There's not enough political capital to pull that off, whatever. I think that that's something that we should pursue. I know lots of people don't like that. I'm just saying this simply not to have that conversation, but to say I'm not just someone who's going to parrot what Trump says and believes because Trump says and believes it. So tariffs in and of themselves for free markets are not a good thing. Inflation is not a good thing. So let's first define these words. We've defined inflation on this program a ton, but I'll do it again. Really quickly, the Cliff's Notes version of this. But inflation is at its core a simple thing. Well, it's convoluted and complex, but the basic cause of inflation is simple. 100% of the time, inflation is the fault of the federal, and it's specifically the federal government. It's not the state government. States can't do this because what happens is the federal government increases the money supply to where they put too much money, new money into the economy that is not reflected by actually what is produced in the economy. And so you have too many dollars that are looking to attach themselves to real value. And so what happens is you water down the value of all dollars in existence. And so inflation is when the government makes your money worth less, not completely worthless, although we head that direction many times. But it's when the federal government makes your dollars, my dollars, all of our dollars worth less because they introduced too many new dollars into the market, into the economy. That is what inflation is. It's not because of rich, greedy corporations. It's not because of trade unions. It's not because of what's happening across the pond. It's not because of what's happening in other parts of the world. It is 100%. Hear me say this. Milton Friedman, who's much smarter than me, he has explained this. There's videos out there with him explaining this. This is what inflation is. Now, in today's world, we have taken the term inflation and we've gotten a little bit lazy. And we have now, in the common vernacular, inflation means when the cost of things increases. Now, what's interesting is when inflation does lead to price increases, if your dollar is worth less, then people have to charge more dollars to get the value out of what they need to get in order to make the business model work. But that's not the only reason that things increase in value. In fact, I don't have time to get to this either, but I will reference this. Trump has introduced a plan to combat the egg crisis that we have in this country. The price of eggs has been increasing. It has increased, I think, 50-some% since a year ago. So that is not all due to technical inflation where the government has increased the money supply. When you increase the money supply, that affects everything, the increase of all things across the board relatively equally, or equally, you could say. So, but there are other reasons that there could be an increase in the cost of something, the price of something. So with eggs, part of the problem is farmers have been battling bird flu. And when there's bird flu, there's bird deaths. And if these bird deaths, if they are chickens, if they are egg-laying hens, then you have less production. Now you're talking supply and demand. Now you're talking about how when there is a decrease in supply, that means there's going to be an increase in the price. And that's what is affecting that. So I'm simply, and that, by the way, that is on, that article is on the website at the Stack of Stuff at toddhuffshow.com if you want to read that. So I don't want to spend my time there. I'm just simply illustrating that not every price increase is technically because of inflation. We have gotten lazy and we have said inflation simply is the increase in the price of something. And that's not entirely true. Inflation always leads to the prices going up when there is inflation. But every price increase is not due to inflation, if that makes sense. So in other words, you know, the old example, Socrates is a man, but not all men are Socrates, right? So anyway, it's like that, and it requires an understanding. So inflation is the government's fault. The government doing something to the money supply that creates too much money in the system, making all dollars worth less. This is because of government spending. So what happens is the government spends a lot of money. They've got to pay the bills. Instead of raising your taxes, what they do is they create a little extra money to pay for it. But in the process of doing that, they've watered down what a dollar is actually worth. This is 100% on them. So inflation is bad. We have dealt with that. We have stared that in the face, especially during Biden's years in office. All this sort of thing is going to stop. Especially, it takes a little bit of time to change, to have an impact. But this stuff is all going to change, especially if they hit the numbers that Elon and Doge are predicting or targeting. Because if you're cutting federal expenses, that's the other equation for inflation. You no longer have to create excess money to cover the cost of the things that the government's messing around with, trying to provide and everything else. Now you have an economy that's not having inflationary pressures if you're not increasing. In fact, if you're drastically cutting federal spending, there's no need for inflation. So that's inflation. That is bad. That hurts all of us. There's not a silver lining. It's not a good thing. It's bad. It makes your money worth less. It's not good. And it's 100% the fault of the federal government. It is a symptom of a larger problem. The government doesn't respect you. The government doesn't care what you think. The government doesn't want to be fiscally responsible. They're trying to kick the realities of the cost of the things that they're trying to do for us, allegedly do for us. In many cases, potentially, who knows? I think we fear they're all getting kickbacks in some way, shape, manner, or form. So it's one big game that politicians play. They play against the American people. So that is inflation. So what are tariffs? Okay, tariffs are a form of a tax that is applied to imports. Now, tariffs can be blanket tariffs. You could say everything that comes in has an X% tariff applied. It can target certain types of products. Different people manage this different ways. We're just talking about it from an educational perspective. So tariffs are applied on imports, things that are coming from one country into our country. There doesn't have to be tariffs, but there can be tariffs. And so these tariffs are paid by the company that's actually importing them, by the person who's receiving the goods. I've had to do this before with another business I've had, paying some import duties or whatever they call these, but effectively a form of a tariff. So you pay this, and then the person who imports it, the company that imports it, has a decision to make. Do we then absorb this cost? Do we pass the cost along to the consumer? Does doing so make it not impossible, but does it drive down the likelihood that people are going to buy what we're importing? There's a whole bunch of things that people have to calculate. Are we going to accept a smaller margin? Are we going to pass it on? Are we going to absorb it for a period of time? Are we going to look for other ways to get the product that might drive down our costs? This is when people might be looking for domestic production. And by the way, I've got a headline here, Daily Wire. You may have seen that Honda has stopped production of cars in Mexico after tariffs, and instead are moving production to the United States. I think there's a couple of these. This might have been the one that, Indiana. It's coming here to our state. So, well, my state. I'm in Indiana right now, and I know many of you are as well. Anyway, so with inflation, there's really nothing you can do. With tariffs, you have choices. Now, again, I'm not arguing for tariffs, but tariffs are something that can be used proactively as a tool. So now we can get, and that's what I want to get to next, is I want to talk about how this is used as a tool, how Trump is trying to use this as a tool to help the American taxpayer in a greater way than the tariffs that we're facing now, effective today, are going to hurt us. There's a target. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. There's an objective here. Again, with inflation, it's just the government sticking it to you and telling you this is what's going to happen. Your dollar is worth less. Deal with it. With these tariffs, the objective is to actually alleviate some pressure on the American economy, on the American taxpayer, on the American business in the long run. This is a temporary setback or whatever you want to call it. Hopefully that's the objective, is for this to be temporary, to get results that actually are better for Americans, for our nation, for our economy. So that's the difference here. And I want to continue talking about this and give some examples. But my friends, before I do that, let me ask you something. Would you rather take 2 soft gels a day or spend hours in a doctor's office talking about your cholesterol? Because I know what I would choose, and that's why I take Solti. Solti is an all-natural, clinically proven dietary supplement. Again, it's clinically proven, by the way, that lowers cholesterol. No prescriptions, no doctor's visits. I'm not saying there's not a time for that. I'm not telling you not to see your doctor. I'm saying that Solti can help your cholesterol, and it's less expensive. It's not a drug. You don't have these other hassles to contend with. Just 2 soft gels a day. That's all it takes to take care of your heart health. And let's face it, your family needs you healthy. Your church needs you strong. This country needs you in the fight. Solti is a simple way to make sure you're around for the long haul, my friends. Go to Solti.com. That's SOLTEA, Solti.com. Use promo code Todd. You'll save 50% on your first order, plus get free shipping. That's Solti.com, SOLTEA, promo code Todd. 2 soft gels a day. My friends, it doesn't get much easier than that. All right, so getting back here to this conversation about tariffs. Now, what is Trump trying to do with these tariffs? He's trying to use them as a negotiating tool. So again, tariffs is a negotiating tool. Inflation is the outcome of an out-of-control government. One is being used as at least an attempt to create a better financial climate for this nation, a better economy, just to get to the desired outcome. One is being used to make things better. The other is the result of a poor financial climate created by our government. And so that's a fundamental difference. And this isn't a full-throated endorsement of tariffs by any stretch, but context matters. Nuance matters. Now, let's look a little bit at these tariffs specifically. I did some research here. So there's a couple of reasons why Trump has, in his first term or even now, used tariffs or threatened tariffs. One is for strategic objectives. Many of Trump's tariffs were implemented as part of a broader strategy to address trade imbalances to protect industries domestically here in the United States and to achieve specific public policy objectives. Some of them are directly in response to tariffs that have already been levied on the United States products or exports. In fact, if you take a look at that, you'll see that, tariffs have been the way of many countries in dealing with the United States. That's why we've had negotiations like NAFTA, for example, is to get some of these deals worked out that are favorable to the United States of America, to you, the American taxpayer. Excuse me. So, national security justifications. That's another reason why President Trump has enacted tariffs in the past. In fact, when it comes to steel in particular, steel and aluminum, Trump used Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 to allow for tariffs based on national security concerns. So in other words, steel and aluminum are important for national defense, and so a tariff might be applied to something coming in from another country to help the United States not rely upon foreign sources for national defense, for crucial national defense issues or items or whatever. So that's another reason, again, big picture tariffs here. Trump's also tried to address unfair trade practices. That has primarily to do with the practices that are done in China. China basically doesn't really care about intellectual property, patents, that sort of thing. And so they actually steal, in many cases. They actually steal the product, the intellectual property of American companies, sometimes then even creating that product and selling it directly to their own consumers. So there's a list of reasons why tariffs have been used. Trump also has used them to negotiate or renegotiate trade agreements, and sometimes even addressing larger national security issues like fentanyl at the border, drug trafficking, of course, or things pertaining to just illegal immigration in general. So these are the reasons. Again, compare and contrast that with inflation. Inflation is the byproduct of a government that doesn't respect you, doesn't care about the value of your dollar, and they're going to spend so much money that they have to actually create extra money to pay for it. There are reasons, without defending everything about tariffs, to at least see that they're not the same thing. I got to take a break, though. Quick time out, my friends. Back here in just a minute.
Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast and increase your financial wisdom. You will find episodes about investments, the infinite banking concept, how to fight inflation, the financial side of retirement, and financial questions Jesse asked his girlfriend. Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast on any podcast platform or watch it on YouTube. There are new episodes of the Wealth Talks podcast weekly. Search for Wealth Talks podcast online and subscribe for free.
My friends, do you smoke, vape, or chew tobacco? If so, Knick Knack Naturals is here to help you crush your vice. Knick Knacks are nicotine mints that completely dissolve in your mouth. No smoke, no spit, no mess. This product is only for folks currently using nicotine products who are looking for a better alternative. Visit knickknack.com and use promo code Todd to save 15%. That's NICNAC, knickknack.com, promo code Todd. Looking for the ultimate natural health supplement? Z-Stack is a trusted brand formulated by Dr. Zelenko with clinically proven ingredients and proudly manufactured in the USA. Z-Stack is the choice of true patriots who want to fight against the corrupt medical system. Go to zstacklife.com/Todd and use code Todd at checkout to save 15% off your purchase. Z-Stack, empowering you to stay prepared, stay safe, and stay strong. Welcome back, my friends. So, we want to still talk a little bit more about this. Tariffs, inflation, comparing, contrasting, going through this because it matters, my friends. It's not just a blind allegiance to President Trump. There is a difference between these things. So, we've established that there are some reasons, some rationale, some thinking that someone take Trump out of it. Just Biden's had tariffs too, right? So there is reason and rationale for someone to conclude that tariffs might be a tool that need to be used. There is I would say, a good chance that the cost of the tariff gets passed along to the consumer, but that's not necessarily 100% true. But in general, I would say that that's what businesses look. Everything gets passed on to the consumer at some level, but if the business can't move the product, if they pass it along, then they're going to have to maybe look at smaller margins, maybe look at other manufacturing, whatever. Anyway, but there's reasons. It's not just a lack of fiscal responsibility. That is what inflation is. Again, it's not a complete endorsement of a tariff, but it is pointing out that there are differences. So again, we went through a couple of examples of the reasons that Trump or anyone could use tariffs for some strategic objectives, national security justifications, trying to fix unfair trade practices or renegotiate those trade agreements, and sometimes dealing with other issues like Trump is doing with Canada and Mexico. Help us stop the smuggling of fentanyl and drugs and human trafficking into our country. And so if you don't put resources up and aren't helpful in that manner, we're going to take some steps here that's going to impact you economically. So now, some of these tariffs are retaliatory, meaning in some instances, we're just simply responding to a tariff that's already been levied on the United States. So here's some examples of tariffs that have been issued by our neighbors against the United States prior to this most recent attempt by Trump to implement tariffs on Canada and Mexico and even China. So these are tariffs that existed before this. Now let's look specifically here. Let's see. This is Canada. Canada had tariffs on U.S. products before all this happened on dairy products. Canada imposed high tariffs on dairy imports. They could reach as high as 270% for certain products. So this, again, there's always a reason or a justification. This particular tariff was an attempt by Canada to manage the supply of the dairy industry, to protect its domestic supply of dairy products. For poultry, they had issued, again, before now, on poultry products leaving the United States, heading into Canada, there were tariffs on poultry. There were tariffs on eggs, peanuts, and peanut butter. I'm going through a list here. Cotton, sugar, and sugar-containing products. On steel, aluminum, or if you're from over the pond, aluminum, textiles and apparel, automobiles and automobile parts. Those are all tariffs that Canada had on American companies, on American products prior to Donald Trump's recent threats of tariffs. They have had retaliatory tariffs in response to Trump's new tariffs, but there were tariffs before. Let's look at Mexico. Mexico had tariffs on U.S. agricultural products. Now, they have what's called, well, again, this is a type of tariff that anybody can use, tariff rate quotas. So basically, on a tariff rate quota, that means that tariffs might not apply to all of the products. There's a certain amount that might have maybe a lower tariff or no tariff at all. And then once the imports eclipse a certain amount, a tariff is applied, again, to keep foreign imports from competing too much with local domestic production or products. So they've had Mexico puts tariffs on U.S. automobiles and parts, on textiles and apparel, on electronics, on steel and aluminum, on chemicals, on processed foods, on furniture, on paper products, on machinery. You get the idea. Now, there's the same thing with China. I'm not going to go through all this, but it's the same thing. Agricultural products, automobiles. China had tariffs on U.S. imports of these items, soybeans, machinery, chemicals, textiles and apparel, luxury goods, just some of the examples. So, again, a lot of what Trump is trying to do is to say, look, the way that you are putting tariffs on some of our products isn't consistent with what we've done for you. So some of Trump's tariffs are truly retaliatory in the sense of, hey, if you're going to do this to us, we're going to do this to you. And so this is where we are. But the bottom line here, which is why, I say this with a little bit of hesitation because I don't like this route necessarily, but Trump is trying to fix a larger problem, which again could range from border security and drugs coming across the border and human trafficking and everything else, to just making sure that the United States is dealt with fairly in his estimation. The United States, and I think if you understand this, what I'm about to say, then you'll understand, and I know most of you do. I'm talking to someone who's maybe new to this or is really down on Trump because of these tariffs. If you understand what I'm about to say, a lot of this will make sense. The United States has carried more than its fair share of the burden of what needs to be done around the world. The United States, and some of this, listen, we had to go along with this. So I'm not blaming other countries or anything like that. Maybe to some degree there is blame to be assigned there, but we had to say yes. We had to say yes to the idea that at least at one point in time, we were the world's police. If you look at what's happening in Ukraine right now, you can say that can be traced back to the idea that the United States of America, everybody looks to us as the world's police or as the big brother when there's problems with a foreign adversary. The United States is always, their sleeve is tugged on by the little brother. Hey, can you take care of me? Can you protect me? Can you fix this problem? That's what Ukraine's doing now. They want guarantees of security provided by the United States of America when it comes to Russia and negotiating a ceasefire. So if you understand that the United States, from Trump's perspective, we've carried the cost, we've carried the burden, we've watched families have to bury their sons and daughters in defense of this nation, but also in defending things that sometimes we, again, were the only ones defending or the one definitely leading the charge. And Trump's just saying America has done enough for the world to the point to where we're going to say no to some of this stuff. We're not totally withdrawing from everywhere. We're not here to say that there's not a place for a strong United States. That's not the point. The point is to say Europe should be concerned about Europe more than the United States should be concerned about Europe. It doesn't mean we don't care. It just means, listen, it's just like anything else. You care about what's happening within your family. It's nice when other people care. I would hope that we would all have compassion and empathy when people are going through difficulties. But no matter how much compassion or empathy one has, it doesn't hit someone outside the circumstance that you're in the same as it hits you. And so there's a degree of that, without totally isolating, without saying it's not my problem, suck it up, buttercup. But there's a degree of that Trump is out there pushing. We're tired of funding everything. We've got a mess in the United States. We just watched USAID, US aid, as I like to refer to it. It seems like the obvious way to refer to it. But you look at how that was handled, how that's effectively being shut down, more or less. So, but we've witnessed some of the things that we're doing around the world, things that the left defends. Baghdad Sesame Street, for example. Anyway, it's just in the broader context, Trump is saying enough. It's enough. We're not going to fix all your problems. We're not going to fund everything. We're not here to be the cash cow. We're not here to bail you out of any difficulty. You, at some point, countries around the world have to learn to stand up for yourselves. Don't be dragging us into everything. Whether you agree with that or not, that's where Trump's coming from. And I've got to take a timeout, my friends. Sit tight. You are listening here to the home of conservative, not better talk. I am your host, Todd Huff, back here in just a minute.
Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast and increase your financial wisdom. You will find episodes about investments, the infinite banking concept, how to fight inflation, the financial side of retirement, and financial questions Jesse asked his girlfriend. Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast on any podcast platform or watch it on YouTube. There are new episodes of the Wealth Talks podcast weekly. Search for Wealth Talks podcast online and subscribe for free.
My friends, do you smoke, vape, or chew tobacco? If so, Knick Knack Naturals is here to help you crush your vice. Knick Knacks are nicotine mints that completely dissolve in your mouth. No smoke, no spit, no mess. This product is only for folks currently using nicotine products who are looking for a better alternative. Visit knickknack.com and use promo code Todd to save 15%. That's NICNAC, knickknack.com, promo code Todd. Looking for the ultimate natural health supplement? Z-Stack is a trusted brand formulated by Dr. Zelenko with clinically proven ingredients and proudly manufactured in the USA. Z-Stack is the choice of true patriots who want to fight against the corrupt medical system. Go to zstacklife.com/Todd and use code Todd at checkout to save 15% off your purchase. Z-Stack, empowering you to stay prepared, stay safe, and stay strong. Welcome back, my friends. So, I want to, that's all I want to, it's not all I want to say about tariffs and inflation and all that sort of stuff, but it is where I need to stop now because there's something else I told you I was going to get to. There's another thing that I wanted to get to that I knew I wouldn't have time for, but I did tell you at the beginning of the program that we were going to talk about Zelensky and basically that whole the brouhaha that took place in the Oval Office on Friday. We talked about that yesterday, but the American people, my friend, this is actually quite encouraging. The American people are, I think, figuring out what's going on here. In fact, there's a survey here. What is the Harvard poll? It's a Harvard poll that's out there. There's a question in the poll that read this: do you want Ukraine to continue the war against Russia or negotiate a settlement with Russia? So, those who said they want to negotiate a settlement, which is my position, it's Trump's position. 61% of Democrats want a settlement negotiated. 80% 80% of Republicans want a settlement negotiated. 73% of independents want a settlement negotiated. Friends, that is overwhelming support for Trump's position. Now, a majority of independents, 53%, backed Trump announcing direct U.S.-Russia negotiations to end the war. So people may not want the United States involved. They may not want United States dealing directly with Russia. At some point, I don't know how this is going to get done. We've watched what happens when there's weak leadership and there's not an attempt for the United States to get involved. But be that as it may, there's some people who don't like the U.S. getting involved either with Russia in particular or getting involved in general. 85% of Republicans are on board with that, and 40% of Democrats are on board with that. So the bottom line here is that a lot of people are in favor. Now, as I went through yesterday, there's only 4 logical conclusions. I only mentioned 3 of them because one of them is incredibly unlikely. In fact, nearly impossible. I don't like to say anything's impossible, but barring some divine intervention or some major change, one of these is virtually impossible. So one of the possible outcomes is that Russia wins this war, annihilates Ukraine. Another is, this is the one that's unlikely, Ukraine somehow wins the war. A third is that this draws on and America and other countries in Europe somehow get pulled into this thing as a way to prevent number 1 from happening, which would have been the Russia winning the war scenario. And the 4th option is a ceasefire. So out of those options, of course, a ceasefire is the most important thing. Now, or I would say the most obvious choice for what is best, right, is a ceasefire. Now, I understand. I'm one that criticizes signing sheets of paper and a pinky promise. But that's so you go back to the Iran nuclear deal. You go back to the North Korean promise of no nukes. You go to other, the way that the Hamas in Israel, we know that Hamas is never going to honor their word. I get all that. I get that, and it's a real problem. And I know Russia may not honor what they say, but there is a different calculus here when Donald Trump, forget about Trump, but when there is strong American leadership that's involved. We haven't had that. We haven't had that the past 4 years. And so now this is, to me, clearly the best option. If you can find a solution that both sides can agree to. Neither side is going to get everything that they want. But what's most important is that we are not, as Trump says, playing with World War III. Zelensky cannot be playing with World War III because one of the options, again, is for Europe and the United States to get pulled into this war. And that, my friends, would be a terrible, terrible situation. So, that being said, and I don't have much time left, but there are people out there that actually have been calling for you. I've seen them. They're lunatics out there or people on social media. But there are some people who want to see U.S. troops. It is mind-boggling to me. It's crazy to me. This is not our war. Why does America have to get involved in every global conflict that happens? It's insanity. We are playing with fire. This is not, again, it doesn't mean that we don't care. It doesn't mean that we can't have allies and friends, but it doesn't mean that we're fighting every single war that happens on planet Earth. I mean, we're just coming through an era of lots of war. Afghanistan was the longest continuous war in American history. I mean, we have been through it here in the 21st century, my friends, with the war on terrorism and all this stuff that's happening around the world. So we've seen what war gets us. Let's see if we can negotiate peace. I'm out of time, though, my friends. Gotta go. Thanks for listening. SDG.
Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast and increase your financial wisdom. You will find episodes about investments, the infinite banking concept, how to fight inflation, the financial side of retirement, and financial questions Jesse asked his girlfriend. Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast on any podcast platform or watch it on YouTube. There are new episodes of the Wealth Talks podcast weekly. Search for Wealth Talks podcast online and subscribe for free.
My friends, do you smoke, vape, or chew tobacco? If so, Knick Knack Naturals is here to help you crush your vice. Knick Knacks are nicotine mints that completely dissolve in your mouth. No smoke, no spit, no mess. This product is only for folks currently using nicotine products who are looking for a better alternative. Visit knickknack.com and use promo code Todd to save 15%. That's NICNAC, knickknack.com, promo code Todd.